This is Mr. MegaManFan. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. You know what to do. This is Buddy. He's our postal inspector, and he knows what to do. Check out anything new I got in the mail. And today, that is the HyperMegaTech Super Pocket Neo Geo Edition. The only ones I've bought so far are the Capcom and the Taito, but since I recently got a Neo Geo CD, and it's the first official Neo Geo home console I've ever owned, not counting those mini arcade cabs that come preloaded with games, I thought, why not get something else that comes preloaded with games? Meanwhile, Buddy is inspecting the other package that I got in the mail, which is a broken PlayStation Portal. It looks cosmetically fine, but it doesn't power on. Not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. It was given to me by a friend from Facebook who said, don't be surprised if it shows up on your doorstep someday. And indeed, he was right about that. Back to HyperMegaTech though, which as you may or may not know is a division of Blaze Entertainment, which is responsible for the Evercade portables and home consoles. So inside this box we have a couple of pieces of cardboard and the Neo Geo edition of the Super Pocket with some very classic Neo Geo trim, gold and black. It's a very suitable color set for Neo Geo nostalgia. I really like the finishing touches on this. It looks and feels nice. It's got just a great aesthetic appeal. Even if you weren't playing this, you'd want to put it on a stand and display it and show it to your friends. So I can see how some people might be tempted to do it just for that, but I want to play the games, man. It's all about the games. So if you didn't know, there's the Blaze Entertainment logo. That confirms this is part of the whole Evercade sphere of influence. It will take original Evercade games. There is a removable dummy cartridge in the back, and you'll hear my reaction to how tightly that cartridge was packed into the Super Pocket. It was not easy to remove. Once I got it out the first time, it got easier after that, but it was in there very firmly. Maybe that's just from heat or stress during shipping. Maybe it warped a little, I don't know. It's made out of plastic, so anything's possible. Also, the bass volume was super loud, which is something I've experienced with HyperMegaTech before. I actually turned the volume down in this segment to about 30%, and then you'll see I turned down the volume some more. So that's how loud it will be when you first boot it up. You can't say that these things don't come with some robust speakers on the inside. And as noted, it's preloaded with a selection of Neo Geo games. A pretty good selection, I would say. You might be wondering why certain titles aren't there. Well, that's because they're selling a separate cartridge for Neo Geo games that will be Evercade and HyperMegaTech compatible. So whatever Neo Geo classics you think should be on here that aren't will probably be on that future cartridge, which I went ahead and pre-ordered because if I'm going to have the HyperMegaTech Neo Geo edition, I might as well have the additional cartridge to add more games. But I went for the familiar right away. I went with Metal Slug X because I love the Metal Slug franchise, and I wanted to see how well it would play on the HyperMegaTech. Now, some of you Neo Geo enthusiasts may prefer to play this with stick and arcade buttons, and I understand that sentiment, but I've been playing ported versions of Neo Geo games on multiple home consoles for a while now, so a D-pad and these smaller buttons actually doesn't feel too out of line for me. I do like how the joystick and arcade buttons feel when you have a bigger setup, but this is not a bad way to play Metal Slug X at all. Nor is it bad for Shock Troopers. One thing I find interesting is that we don't get that classic Neo Geo Megs boot up, the sequence that can be hard for some low-end emulators to properly, they just render it like shit. There's no other way to say it. Watch a re-res video or Wicked Gamer and Collector, somebody like that who's done one of those cheap 10,001 home consoles that has Neo Geo games loaded on an SD card. Maybe they just decided to avoid that controversy altogether by not having the Neo Geo boot up sound, but the lack of it feels weird, and the green screen instead also feels weird. But the performance of the games itself seems arcade-like. Shock Troopers has a little bit of slowdown, but I think the arcade game was like that too, because there were a lot of sprites on the screen at one time. And menus are what you would expect for HyperMegaTech and Evercade. You can change your ratios, add or remove scan lines. There's a photosensitivity warning you can turn on or off. I turned it off, but let's try a cartridge.
Oh.
Yeah, that genuinely hurt getting it out the first time. I had to stick my thumbnail in between the cartridge and the unit itself and pry with all my might. And I had to trim my nails afterwards because I think I might have chipped a piece off doing that. And that's why I went, ow! But hopefully your HyperMegaTech Neo Geo Super Pocket will not have nearly that much trouble removing the dummy cartridge. I may just have had bad luck here. But as you can see, Evercade cartridges work just fine once the dummy cartridge is removed. I've got a Data East arcade collection in here, and I'm playing Crude Busters, and it's working exactly the way it would on the Evercade Alpha, the Evercade Versus, the Evercade EXP. It's pretty much standard across the board now. Even the old Namco collections that only worked on the handhelds and not the consoles now work on everything. I've also got the Metal Dragon Life on Mars 2-pack indie games that were ported over to the Evercade platform. I believe these were both Genesis games. I reviewed this at some point, and I remember thinking they were Sega Genesis titles at the time, so if I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments section. You can also leave any comments about the HyperMegaTech Neo Geo Pocket Super Pocket. That is such a mouthful to say. Why don't we just call it the Neo Geo Pocket? Well, maybe not, because then you'd confuse it with the original handheld Neo Geo systems, the Pocket and the Pocket Color. So I guess we got to call it the Neo Geo Super Pocket to differentiate it. But as you can see, all my save states from Life on Mars are still loaded on the cartridge when I put it into the Neo Geo Super Pocket, so everything is as it should be. And the dummy cartridge is still firm, but it goes in much easier the second time around. And I will admit, it looks good with the dummy cartridge flush pressed all the way into the back. It looks solid all the way around, so as hard as it was to get out, I do appreciate the aesthetic look and feel, which is, at the end of the day, what I'd say the Neo Geo Super Pocket is worth it for. This is all about the aesthetic and the feel and the preloaded games. Everything else is a bonus.